right, welcome to another episode of the Attorney Lounge. I've got a special guest with me today, one of my good friends, Jason Rowley. Jason, thanks for coming on.
Ryan, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
So, yeah, me too. We've had lots of conversations. This is the first one that's been recorded, so we'll try not to say anything.
The first one we know of.
True. Good point. Good point. So yeah, Jason and I have actually been in the Attorney Lounge together back in our Snell days, and we'll get to some of that. Um, I want to walk through, your career and where you grew up and some of that stuff. And I'm going to start where we may end up finishing here and ask you how your pickleball game is.
Well, so it's about as good as my basketball game, which is not very good. I always kind of chuckled at the fact that for somebody who ended up running a professional basketball team, I was a football player and a wrestler. So I don't know if you've ever seen a wrestler try and play basketball. It's not pretty. Well, the same thing goes with pickleball. I've
Yeah.
played it recreationally a handful of times, 10, 15 times, but certainly not to the point where I have any kind of realistic rating, because there is a rating system
Mm,
if you it all.
interesting.
So my rating would be in the negative, not in the positive. Um, but I've learned a lot about it in a relatively short period of time, and it's a really fun sport, very social. And what's exciting about it, I'm sure we'll get into this, is just the explosive growth it has enjoyed over the last 5 years, and even more in particularly since COVID over the last 3 years. It's an
Yeah.
absolute hockey stick. So really fun to be part of.
Yeah. So I agree. It's a fun sport to play. I remember I was talking to some friends about it this weekend. As a matter of fact, we were talking about we had a in high school our PE class was called Lifetime Sports. I was like, I have this memory of playing pickleball, and I don't know if I'm like making that up. And they're like, no, you didn't make that up. We were playing that, so what, 30 years ago.
Right.
Um, but yeah, it's just exploded in popularity, and I love it. It's a fun sport. It's cool to see it growing, and I guess the nice thing too, based on your commentary, is that you don't have to be good at your sport in order to run a team. So there's hope for people interested in sports law. Running a team doesn't require that you have to be good at that particular sport.
That is absolutely correct.
Good, good. Well, let's start off a little bit with just your background. Tell us kind of where you grew up and how you ended up sort of navigating into law in the first place.
Sure. No, absolutely. It's you look back in your life, I'm in my mid 50s. You look back and you kind of, see what your journey's been, and you realize, particularly if you come from like a place where I did, to end up where I did, you feel pretty good about it, candidly. So, I was born in Ohio, in northeastern Ohio, but my family moved out to Arizona, southern Arizona, south of Tucson, when I was about 8 years old. My grandfather had bought a pretty sizable working cattle ranch back in the 1950s. And when I was about 8 years old, my dad decided he'd had enough of the Ohio winters and moved our entire family out to the cattle ranch to operate and run it. And so from that age until basically I went off to college, we were on the ranch operating it, growing up that way, getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning. And when I say um, it was a rural setting, literally the closest neighbor to ours was about 15 miles away.
Wow.
And literally to get the bus in the morning, you heard the stories about people having to get up and walk, both ways uphill in the snow for an hour to get to the bus stop. That, other than the snow part of it, that was very consistent with kind of how I was brought up and raised. And
Wow.
it was a great way to, it was a great way to spend your childhood. You learn to be pretty resourceful, pretty independent.
Hmm.
Something breaks out there, you got to figure out how to fix it. You can't drive right into the local hardware store or the local grocery store. Those are all, a 45-hour drive to get to. So,
Wow.
so you really learn to kind of be a bit independent, resourceful, and
Yeah.
I just absolutely I enjoyed growing up that way.
So how far away from the border were you?
So
Were you pretty close?
the closest point, the southern border of our ranch is about 5 miles from the U.S. Mexican border. So very close.
Wow. Hmm,
And
that's crazy.
we've had our fair share of dealing with the immigration issues and been right in the middle of that.
Yep.
And it's it's like anything else. The reality of the situation down there is different than sometimes how it's portrayed.
Mhm.
Uh, but just a great way to grow up.
How many, a couple other questions about the ranch. How many acres and, how much cattle did you have down there?
Sure. At full operation, we've been in a drought for about the last 15 years, but at full capacity, it would operate at about 1,100 head, and we ranched about 48,000 acres, almost 50,000 acres total, and that's a combination of deeded land and land that is leased from either the state or the federal government, which is a pretty consistent setup and structure for large scale ranching in the West.
Mm,
It's kind of a consistent way that it's handled. So yeah,
wow.
we've had families that have worked for us for multi generations and are still there working on it,
Mm,
and it's something that I love taking my kids down to visit and spend time with it. It's
yeah.
uh it's a great piece of our family history.
Yeah, your family still owns that property, right? If I recall, you guys were down there for Thanksgiving and, still spend time down there.
My
Um,
parents still operate it, still live and operate on it.
that's amazing. That's cool, and you actually worked on the ranch.
Oh yeah, everything from so we're a beef operation, not a dairy operation.
Mm,
We had a couple of milk cows, so literally milking cows in the morning, picking up eggs from the chicken, baling hay because we had about 400 acres of irrigated hayland where we baled our own hay,
mhm,
cleaning out the horse stalls, feeding
crazy.
the cattle in the morning. I mean, all of it, just the typical rural um, upbringing where you have to do all those chores, and it's not like you don't have an option. There's just that's kind of what you do, and part of that life growing up.
That's awesome. I mean, it's just an interesting sort of background, especially too, like when you think about kind of your career and where you ended up to have kind of started your life that way. So you end up eventually going to U of A with our good buddy Michael Maladon.
That's right.
And tell us a little bit about U of A, and then I'm curious too, kind of because you transitioned into the military, I think after you graduated, but talk about sort of your undergrad experience, and then how you ended up in the military.
Sure. So being a Tucson guy, so I did go to high school in Tucson, at South Point High School there, and candidly, going through high school, knowing was going to plan on going to college, had looked out of state, and in particular, having been born in Ohio, had a lot of family that had attended Ohio State, and so was really kind of keyed in on going back there for college. And it was funny. If I remember my junior year around Thanksgiving time, I went back to visit, and it was like negative
Freezing.
85 degrees and
Yeah.
just absolutely freezing. And at that point in time, I realized there is no way in the world I'm going back there for school. And
Mhm.
you know what? I love the U of A. I was a big U of A basketball fan, given how the basketball team was playing around that time. And it's a great campus, great atmosphere. And I just decided, you know what? I know I'm from here and I'm familiar with it. So I'm just going to at least maybe do my first year here and see how I like it, and ended up going the distance. And what was cool about it is guys like Mike, and others from Phoenix or other parts of the country. You had a large number of kids coming in from different states, and so the reality is, even though I grew up there and kept some of my friends from high school during the college days, I met a whole host
Yeah.
of other individuals, and so it was a totally different experience for me than high school. Loved
Yep.
it, enjoyed it. I was in a fraternity with Mike there, and we
Mhm.
really had a great time, and no regrets sticking around Tucson and the U of A.
Yep. Yep. And then you ended up at what point in that when you graduated, then did you go straight into the military?
I actually worked
Or
for my
how d
yeah, so I worked for my dad also had some business in Tucson, and so I worked for him for
Okay.
about a year after graduation. I was planning on going into the military. My one of my, I guess, dreams, if you will, or something I had always thought would be just when you're a kid, you're like, this would be really cool to do and something I want to do. both of my grandfathers were in the Navy in World War II vets, saw active combat. They were literally, in some of the larger battles you'd hear about in the Pacific theater. And so the Navy was always had an interest to me, but I was interested in doing and going into the Navy SEAL program. And so, did my 1 year working for my dad. And then I kind of went to him and I said, you know what? This is something I've always wanted to do. And he said, you're an idiot. Go and do it. It's your choice. He's like, why did I pay for college? And you're just going to go in. And I went in, I was an enlisted guy. I didn't even go in as an officer.
Wow.
Uh, and the reason being is when did the research on the SEAL program, if you didn't go through OCS, or you weren't or ROTC in college, or if you didn't go to the Naval Academy, the number of slots that got picked as officers to go into SEAL training was a much smaller percentage than if you were an enlisted guy. If you were enlisted, you
Hmm.
go to camp, you go to your regular designator school to learn whatever your basic trade would be. For myself, it was intelligence specialist. You do that for, I can't remember, maybe 10 weeks. And if you then take the tests and do all the workups to get accepted into SEAL training, you then immediately go and get deployed to BUDS, basic underwater demolition and SEAL training in Coronado, California, in literally within like a 6-month period. If I had
Wow.
joined as an officer, not having done ROTC, I would have had to go out into the fleet as like a surface warfare officer for 2 or 3 years and then try and
Oh,
qualify for the SEAL training. So for me, it was like, you know what? I don't care as much about being an officer. My grandfathers weren't officers. They were just the typical swabby sailors. Like,
yep.
good enough for me. That's what I want to do. And so
That's
joined,
awesome.
took all the exams, got admitted, classed up in January of 1995, which was, if you've ever been to San Diego in January, the water is not warm. It's not,
Freezing.
yeah, it's
Yes.
not even warm in July, and it's certainly
No.
in in January. So classed up in 2000, or I'm sorry, 1995. Class 206 was my class number,
Hmm.
and it was a great experience. I didn't make it through like most.
Yep.
Gave it a good run. I was in the training program for almost 6 months. Washed out and got some injuries and things like that, and just
Wow.
the end of the day, ended up having to go out into the fleet anyway and do the rest of my time in the Navy because this my journey was very similar to a lot of guys. They joined to do the SEALs. They don't make it through. You still owe the US government the remaining 3 years on your commitment, which
Yep.
like going into it. And so I was fortunate that my backup plan, which was doing intelligence, was then what I got deployed to after that. And
Mhm.
that was still in Coronado Island. I got assigned to the Third Fleet Admiral staff and spent the rest of my time that next 3 years with Vice Admiral Herb Brown, basically doing intel analysis, doing briefs for the officer corps there, and that was also a terrific experience.
That's amazing. So, did you going back to the SEAL part of it, like, did you make it to Hell Week or
I
that
did,
what
I
you
did,
did you make
I
it through that? How you
yeah,
did?
I did. My issue was when I got to what you'd call dive phase. I just got to a point where from my comfort level in the water, I could never get past that mental point that others, and that's what they do there. Their entire apparatus in the training is to find your weakest point and then press on that
Yeah.
and press on it until you either find a way to break through it or or you can't. One of
Wow.
the and for me, even to this day, in an underwater setting, I'm not that comfortable. I wasn't a great swimmer going into it. And I remember some of my buddies in college when I told them I was going into the SEALs. They're like, "Do you even know how to swim?" I'm like, "Yeah, I know how to swim." But, I was not. But here's an interesting thing: I distinctly remember one guy who was in my class, and I can't remember his name. He um, he was an officer. He was a Naval Academy graduate and played water polo. at the Naval Academy,
Hmm.
and he was in my class, and he washed out after probably like 3 months, and
Wow.
it was just an amazing thing how the program is so dialed into to being able to figure out what it is
Yep.
you and how do we manipulate that and teach you to make yourself get past it.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so for me,
Mm.
uh, I would tell you to this day, it's still probably the one thing in my professional life that still bothers me the most that I didn't make it through. It's always that thing. And here's the funny thing. So you fast forward to going to law school. Um, because I made it as far as I had the opportunity to go back and try it again. So
Oh, uh-huh.
if you achieve a certain level while you're in butts the first time,
Mhm.
you can actually reapply. And they do that purposely because I think they recognize that, like, again, in my class, we probably had 20 guys. It was they were like a retread. It was the second time they were going through because they either got
Right.
hurt, whatever it was. They went out and
Mhm.
worked things they right. So I had actually reapplied, had gotten reaccepted, but at that time, I had now been in the military 3.5 years. I was getting into my mid-20s rather than being early 20s. I did have some wear and tear on me from, the first go through and trying to stay in shape for it and everything.
Mhm.
I had always wanted to go to law school. My whole plan was to do the military, do the SEALs, get out, go to law school, go have a career as a lawyer or wherever that took me.
Yep.
The piece that didn't really work out was the SEAL piece. Um, so I applied to the SEAL program. I also applied to law school at the same time, kind of hedging my bets. I
Mhm.
got into law school again, I was 6 months before I was eight, eligible to be discharged from the military. And I just kind of said, maybe maybe this
Maybe.
has passed and I need to go a different course. And so I got out of
Yeah.
the military and ended up going back to law school at the U of A.
So you knew like, at what point in your life did you start to think about law school? Was it in undergrad? Was it during the military? Like, when did that kinda come into your mind?
I have to tell you that I can't remember a a distinct point in time other than the fact that for almost my entire life that I can remember even thinking about career or what I wanted to do. Um, being a lawyer was one of those things that was top of mind for me.
Mhm.
And I think part of it is I had my dad being a businessman as well, had some close friends who were attorneys, and I always looked up to those folks. He kind of reinforced to me that, like, have a skill, have a profession, maybe go to business school, maybe go to law school. Candidly, I was stronger on the verbal, written than the math and the numbers. We all have our strengths and weaknesses. I
Yep.
was definitely stronger on the on that side of the equation, if you will. And so it was just more of a natural fit for me. And and so I just kind of that's what I had in my head, and that's it.
Yeah.
It all seemed to fall into place as I kind of advanced down life.
Yep.
And so by the time I got to law school, though, I have to tell you, and after doing the military and even I'll say this about the SEALs in particular, the biggest defeat for me, but also I learned things there about kind of toughness and perseverance and just how to deal with adversity that has carried me through my entire career and life, no doubt
Yeah.
about it. And
Yeah.
I will also tell you that the learning how to mentally deal with the failure of it also has helped me during that entire journey because you
Yeah.
realize things aren't always going to work out the way you want them to, and you got to learn how to pivot and figure it
Yeah.
out.
Well, it's interesting to me that you even think of that as being a failure. I mean, we've talked about it before, but it's like some of it is just physically, like, some people just, like, we all like, there's there's a limit to our physical capability. It's not like, I mean, the fact that you made it as far as you did, like, is so, like, 1/10 of 1% of the population, I think, could make it through what you made it through, to get to that point. And it's like, if your body just says, "Hey, like, I can't accomplish this task." Yeah, I mean, it's not failure, it's just, but
Even more something in your mind, and for me, that was really at the inability um, to kind of calm yourself in those highly like fight or flight moment. I think that's the best
yeah,
way to like
right.
put you in a place where you think I might your mind says, "I'm gonna die here."
Right.
And
You're right.
and and some people can bust through that, and others, it kinda controls them and takes over, and
Yeah.
it's and I get that point. You I guess that's why I look at it both ways. I learned a lot from it, and I feel like I'm glad that I did it. I'm proud of it, but there's always
Yeah.
just a piece in the back of my mind that says, "What could I have done differently to overcome that and not have that, that failure in life?" But we all fail, I
Yeah.
think. That's just
Yeah, I mean, and absolutely. I mean, we've all failed at different things. I mean, but you pushed yourself to your mental and physical boundaries. And like, I mean, I can honestly say that I don't know what my physical, I didn't go to the military. I mean, the closest thing I got was playing junior college baseball, right? And it was like, but I don't what are my physical and mental sort of boundaries? I feel like you have a better sense of that within yourself probably than most people do given that experience that you went through.
I think I think that's probably right. And when I look at my some other like hobbies, things that have interested me, things I've kind of done on my own since then, they probably are driven by a bit of that. An example would be when I turned 40, I did the double crossing of the
Mm,
Grand Canyon nonstop by myself, like solo. I didn't have a hiking buddy with me, didn't have anybody. It was something I'd set as a goal. I want to do the 48 miles from rim to rim to rim nonstop in one day. And I did it in like 16 hours and 29 minutes.
so wait,
And
you went back and forth twice?
I went from the south rim,
Yeah.
north rim, and back.
Okay. Yeah.
Stop. So that's called rim to rim to rim.
Okay.
And, you know, I knew that if I trained for something like that, I knew I could do it. And just because I had pushed myself physically far before and kind of knew what it was like to be in that mental state where your body's kind of saying, I can't really do this. You push through it and you manage to do it. I distinctly remember, I don't know if you ever hiked the Grand Canyon, but when you're coming back up the South Rim up to
Mhm.
Bar right there up on Bright Angel Trail,
Yep.
you're about 4 miles down and you can hear everybody up on the rim, like having dinner at the restaurant,
Yep.
at the and all
The
that.
El
And
Tovar Lodge up there. Yep. Yep.
right. And so coming back up that, it was probably about I had 4 miles or so left. I could hear all the voices. I was starting to maybe hallucinate a little bit because at that point I'd been going for, you know, 13, 14 hours. It was dark out. I just had the headlamp on and you start kind of seeing things a little bit and you hear these voices up there and it just kind of
Yeah.
messes with your
Gotta
head.
play with your mind. Yeah.
That's where you just say, okay, one foot after the other. And then before you know it, boom, you get to the top. So,
What do you
experience.
think like, you push yourself so hard, like, on all these things, like, what do you think it like, what's in you that sorta drives you to wanna accomplish these things? Do you have a sense of that? I mean
Yeah, I don't. I sometimes, again, you look back in your life and you think about why you decide to do certain things. I've also done a fair amount of mountaineering, like, peak climbing,
mhm,
mountain here and other ones. And I think there's something appealing to me about doing things that most other people don't do or haven't done or wouldn't be willing to do. And I'm I'm competitive, but I'm not like hyper competitive that way.
mhm,
I there's just something there's something to me that pushing yourself kind of helps define maybe who you are. And when I think
yeah,
about, for example, that like the books or the stories, like real true stories that are the most interesting to me, like my favorite book is Endurance, and that's the story of Shackleton, who his ship, the Endurance, got caught in the South Pole with a crew of 114 sailors back in like the late 1800s or early 1900s, and literally he found a way to get out of that situation with every member of his crew surviving, but they were locked down into the polar winter for, if I remember, it ended up being like almost a year and a half or 2 year ordeal. And
wow,
I would recommend that book to anybody. Um, that's those stories to me, like the people who are willing to do things like that,
mhm,
just has always appealed to me. It's just a real reflection of true human spirit and drive and
Yeah.
uh, knowing that we can really accomplish things if we put our minds to it.
Yeah, I think it's amazing. I mean, I have such respect for people that are willing to put themselves in those positions. I mean, for you, you know, serving your country, going through the experience and SEAL training, like I, you know, I've never been able to get myself to put myself in those. You know, I find you know, there's the chicken exit for me that's always available, I guess. So I've never pushed myself in it, but but those stories like you talk about, they fascinate me. Like, I'm completely enamored and fascinated with the SEAL, program and the people that are willing to put themselves in those positions. I've just never had the intestinal fortitude to do it myself, but the people that are willing to do it, I'm completely fascinated by, and I'd like to think that I could do it, but, David Goggins, I think, I listened to some of his stuff, and
Right.
and it's I don't know that it's just interesting to me the mindset that you have to have and the ability to sort of almost kind of step outside of yourself and um it just like I have so much respect for people that can do that.
But
Um
you also, you push yourself in different ways, even for a young person who's thinking about going to law school or going into medical school or starting a business. Those things take risk, they take effort, they take a level of grit and determination. So there's different levels of it.
yeah.
And to your point, the respect I have for the people who not just try it but also make it through, having been close to making it through and knowing like what it takes to actually break through that. One of the worst things you could ever hear is you hear of people out there claiming to be Navy SEALs when they're not. I'm always for my entire life after the SEALs or after my time in Buds trying to become one,
Mhm.
I've always been so careful to never try and insinuate that I was one because that's the most disrespectful thing you could ever do.
Yeah.
It's just it's you
And I
just have
think yeah, part of it for me I think is like don't try to compare like I fall into this trap of comparing myself to others like right versus I think like a lot of that stuff it's like it's more the self sort of you're really competing with yourself. Like,
right.
what can you push yourself to do? Everybody's pushing them. I mean, to say that, hey, in order for me to be like satisfied with my ability to like accomplish things, I need to do the same things that a Navy SEAL would do. Some people like we all challenge ourselves in our own individual ways, and it's more about I think continuing to sort of push yourself in your own way in whatever area you're in life to keep trying to progress, keep trying to do things, put yourself in uncomfortable positions, keep trying to, you know, make yourself better, do better, with yourself
Yeah.
versus like, hey, if I don't do what this guy did, if I don't go rim to rim to rim in 16 hours, then I'm less than. It's more about that battle that you have within your own mind of sort of continuing to sort of progress and push yourself forward.
I think that's right. I also think you'd be surprised that even the people that you look at that have accomplished things that you kind of can't believe they've accomplished or you're amazed by, or you think, I could never do that. In my experience, having dealt with like the SEAL type of person or having dealt with the professional high level, not just high level athlete, the elite of the elite
Mhm.
athlete. You'd be surprised how many times those individuals also have their own insecurities and might look at somebody like you and say, "This guy's a this guy's the general counsel of a publicly traded company. That must be really complicated. I can't even get my head around how somebody can get to that point to have that kind of responsibility and how they can
Mhm.
make the decisions they have to make to move that organization along." So everybody has their own, I think, their own insecurities or their own things they compare people to.
Yeah.
Uh, it's like you see it even when you deal with people who are you look at and just think, wow, everything they do must be at the absolute pinnacle, and that's not always the
Yeah.
case. They have their own insecurities.
Well, and we've talked about this too, not to jump ahead too much, but that sometimes what you aspire to and you think, "Oh, that's something I would love to do," and that person's got it all. I think we both had some success in our career, and sometimes you get to that point and you're kind of like, it's not all it's cracked up to be.
Right.
Sometimes you can be chasing these false idols, and then you get there and you're like, wait a second, why was I striving so hard to accomplish this in the first place? Um, well, we'll get to some of that. So, okay, so transitioning out of your military career, you go to U of A, back to Arizona, you get your law degree, and you start out at Snell and Wilmer, and that's where we ended up working together.
That's
I've
right.
been practicing for a couple years, and then you joined the business and finance group at Snell. So, how was that? What was your experience like in private practice? Did you like that? Was that something you enjoyed?
I, I did enjoy it. And the thing I'd say I enjoyed about it the most was the work was great, interesting. Going to a place like Snell that had a wide range of sophisticated clients, whether smaller startups or bigger organizations like an APS or pick them, you know them all.
Hmm.
Uh, Being exposed very quickly to those types of clients was wonderful. A wonderful way to start a legal career from my perspective, at least knowing what I
Yeah.
wanted to accomplish. But right out of the gates, the thing that I really appreciated about it was the friendships and having colleagues that were all pretty like minded, had going through the same types of challenges together, whether it would be in your own departmental group, all of the business finance associates, kind of knowing which partners are going to be a struggle to work with, or knowing given the advice I got from you and from Mike Maladon and Littlefield and Brad Gazaway and others. And then when younger guys came up giving them that same kind of advice, you have this camaraderie that frankly in a lot of ways was like the military. You have this shared experience um, that
Yeah.
you're going through as you're developing through your career and life.
Hmm.
And the setting that Snell provided, and I'm sure every law firm, major law firm, have that same type of component to it for a young attorney coming in. But that really, to me, was a differentiator, and I think Mike Maladon for that because he's the one who made those initial introductions to me to get the interview, to even have the opportunity to
Yep.
come to Small and Wilmer. So that friendship
Yep.
from college had a huge multiplying impact on my life going forward because you run through when we talk about this, you run through the kind of course of your professional life and you look back at
Hmm.
individual circumstances that moved you forward and you're like, okay, what got me to that circumstance? And in almost every case, it's a relationship that puts you in a position to then take advantage of an opportunity
Yep.
that you have to do the work and everything, but it
Yep.
it was invaluable to me. Snell was absolutely the springboard for the rest of my career.
Yeah. No, I feel the same way. I thought was, yeah. You look back and you couldn't have had a better place, for me to start my career with the people that I met, like I said, the access to different deal work, the companies you worked with. I mean, we all kind of like they say it's definitely not SEAL training, but going through the experience of working for Steve Pigeon was a little bit of a we can all kind of bond over that now, and you're kind of grinding through it at the time. Steve, for those that don't know, is unbelievable. In my mind, the best securities lawyer in the country. Works at a firm called Snell and Wilmer in Phoenix, Arizona. He was there when I was there. He now works for DLA Piper, but hands down, went toe to toe with the biggest firms in the country on some massive transactions, and was just a invaluable experience for a lot of us to go through and work for somebody like that who's that smart and that demanding. Um, and it does kind of set you up. You kind of graduate law school and you think you know something, and then you start practicing and you realize I don't know anything. And so, having somebody like that to mentor you and sort of, help in that early, part of your career to sort of build, I think it set a foundation for all of us that then we could then springboard into more successful things in the future in our career. So,
Yeah, no doubt. And a guy like Steve, he didn't mentor in the traditional sense where sit down and you know this, sit down and tell you, where you can improve in this and that. He mentored by how he conducted himself.
yeah,
And so if you you have to observe and be willing to really absorb, being around somebody like that, because that's how you learn from somebody. And he knew what he was doing. And to your point, you'd sit there on a conference call with him with opposing counsel from some big New York law firm, and he would just mop the floor with him. And it would
Yeah.
be it would be a sight to see, or a sight to behold. And you would very quickly learn, okay, here's the way you handle this situation, or here's the way you handle that situation.
Yep.
And that kind of direct exposure is
Yeah. No, I think
invaluable.
it's invaluable. Yeah, and it gives you a lot of confidence, I think, when you go through that experience, and working with people like that. Real quick, I want to recognize our sponsor, Array. Array handles all of the details of litigation so that you can focus on winning your case. They take care of forensic collection, e-discovery, managed review, record retrieval, court reporting, legal staffing and recruiting, trial support, you name it. I'm the general counsel at Array, so I may be a little bit biased, but I was also a client before I started working there too. I've used them on various matters, and they've always delivered. If you're involved in a lawsuit, make Array your first call, and they'll help you get organized right from the beginning. You can reach out to me or visit trustarray.com. Now, back to the pod. You leave Snell, and you go work with our buddy Michael Maladon at Vantile, which, interesting thing about Vantile, he's one of the most, I always say Brian Mueller's most successful business person nobody's ever heard of.
Right.
Brian is the president of Grand Canyon and Grand Canyon University. Larry Vantile is one of the most successful people, I think, in the world. Largest private automotive dealership group that ended up, eventually sold to Berkshire Hathaway, and now I think he's the chairman of the Berkshire Hathaway Automotive Group. But you had the experience of working with them for a couple of years. What was that like?
That was so the legal experience that I got at Snell was amplified and then matched by the business experience that I got by being able to observe Larry and how he operated and how he built his business. And what was great about that is, and you're right, no, he's a genius in the fact that he owns hundreds of dealerships, and there's not a one of them with his name on it. So that kind of tells you about how he approaches it. It's
Hmm.
not from an ego standpoint. It was about literally building a system and a business in the automotive space that nobody else had really done before. And he was just able to create an unbelievable ecosystem. And just watching him operate, watching him deal with employees, watching him deal with his general managers of his individual dealerships, watching him deal with in transactions with I don't want to say an adversary, but somebody on the other side of a
Yeah.
transaction.
Mhm.
Uh, just watching how he conducted himself and how he made decisions and how quickly he made decisions. And he's a brilliant guy, but that fast decision making and um, not spending so much time. And he would always say, like, "Don't just give me the options. Give me advice." Right?
Mhm.
It's,
Yep.
a lot of lawyers, and I think sometimes younger lawyers, go like, "Well, you can do this or you can do that," but he
Yep.
was always, I don't care if you're a lawyer, you're I'm paying you to give me advice, not just give me what
Yeah.
the options are. I've been around long enough to kind of know what the options are already.
Yep.
And then as well, Mike had been working there as the general counsel for several years already, and had developed obviously a much stronger relationship, and had a more personal knowledge with Larry and experience with him. And watching how Mike, as a GC, interacted with Larry was also great training for me, because when I then became a general counsel myself later on, you learn how that
Yep.
GC to principal relationship should really work and function. And the guy that I went to work for at the Suns was kind of had a similar personality, some similar personality traits and approaches to business as Larry did. So that really that helped me and created great training for me in the next step of my career.
Yeah. And so, we're kind of building these layers, your military experience, law school, Snell and Wilmer, working with Steve, working with Larry, working with Michael Maladon. So, you know, you uh, you had worked on the transaction with Steve Pigeon,
Right.
where Robert Sarver acquired the Phoenix Suns from Jerry Colangelo. Uh, you know, you were part of that transaction, so I think he was familiar with you. But then eventually leads to you becoming the general counsel for the Phoenix Suns. how did that come about? How did that transpire? And what was that experience like?
And again, Brian, this goes back to um, relationships and making sure that as you're proceeding through life and your career that you leave a good impression as often as you can with the people that you're dealing with because you never know. So really quickly, how I ended up on the deal, I think is really pertinent, and I've always shared this lesson because I think it's a critical one for younger professionals to learn. Um, as you know, having done it yourself, when you're a mid-level associate at a big firm like Snell and Wilmer, and you have an hour, an annual hourly requirement tagged on your head, chasing those hours, and you're already putting in 10, 12-hour days at that point in your career. I think at that time I was probably annualizing around 2,500 to 2,700 hours a year. So
Yeah.
didn't need any more work or didn't need another project on my plate. I was always already doing a lot of work for Steve and for Matt Feeney and a few others.
Mhm.
Uh, and I just so happened to learn from Steve's executive assistant at the time, Linda Dela Cruz.
Yeah, Linda. Yep.
She kind of mentioned to me because I actually shared, she supported me a little bit, just she supported Steve. So I really didn't have an executive assistant.
Yep.
Which is terrific. She just kind of said to me, "Hey, did you hear Steve got hired to handle the sale of the Phoenix Suns?"
Hmm.
When she said that to me, I literally within half an hour walked into Steve's office and I just said, I know you got this deal. I'd love to work on it. I know I've got XYZ I'm also handling for you on clients. I'll take care of that, but I want to be on this deal. He's like, all right, then let's go. And we got that. So that was in, that was in like April of 2004.
Hmm.
And it was a very competitive process. There were multiple bidders, qualified bidders. So it was not just a function of Robert making an offer on the Suns. There were numerous parties trying to make the acquisition of the team. We did opposition research. We literally hired like private investigators to
Hmm.
go out and make sure we were had a clear understanding of who we were competing against. It was a really fun transaction to work on and had to be done in a very short period of time. So that was late April. Um, and we closed the deal on June 1st. So
Wow.
diligence, documentation, league approval, signing up all the investors in Robert's investment group, um, getting everything lined up and teed up. And it was just an amazing process to go through.
Yeah.
During it, I actually created a pretty good relationship with some of the executives on the Sun side. And
Hmm.
part of that deal was that Robert intended on keeping the executive team that was in the Suns in place moving forward,
Hmm.
including Colangelo. So Jerry stayed with the team for another 3 years after the closing.
Yep.
Uh, so created those relationships as well during the transaction. Uh, Closed the deal in '04. I was still at Snell, did some outside work for the team while I was at Snell, then went over to Van Tile in 2006.
Hmm.
And then about 20 months later, I get a call from Tom O'Malley, who at the time was the
Yep.
general counsel of the Suns. And Tom was was going to be leaving the Suns when Jerry's 3 years were up. He was going to go and work with Jerry doing Jerry's
Yep.
real estate deals and other business interests. And so he called me and said, "Hey, we're going to be hiring my replacement. We've got a handful of people. We've got about, literally we've got 3 or 4 names we're going to talk to. You're one of them. Um, get ready to interview." Wow. Okay.
Okay.
And at this time, again, because of the military, I graduated from law school a bit late, uh, um, compared to my age. So I was 30 when I graduated from law school in 2001. This is now 2008. So just 6, 7 years down the road,
Hmm.
uh, interviewed for the job. Robert, Robert did remember me, but only, uh, not
Yeah.
that much. He primarily dealt with Steve,
Yeah.
but obviously had an intimate understanding of the deal and the
Hmm.
organization, having done all the diligence and reviewed all the contracts and put the put all the documents together and so forth. So knew had a very clear understanding of the organization and had a great interview with Robert and Steve Kerr, and at the time the CEO Rick Welts, who I replaced
Yep.
ultimately, and got the job. And
Yep.
I I'll I'll never forget it. I was at home getting ready to go into work. I was, had my face half shaven with a towel around my waist, and the phone rings at like 8:30 in the morning or like 8 in the morning. I pick it up and it's Robert Sarver, and he said, "Well, um, you got the job. Here's what I'm going to pay you, and I need you to start X date. So
Wow.
congratulations." And that was
That was it.
that was it. Yeah,
The
and
beginning of your son's career.
the beginning of my son's career, and
Yeah.
obviously was very excited. Um, I'll never forget maybe it was I don't know if it was the first day or maybe the second or third day. Your memory fades a little bit. I'd have to go back and see in time when it exactly occurred, but definitely within like my first 3 days there. I don't know if you ever saw my first office when I joined the Suns. It had a glass front to it that looked out into a hallway, and then to the left down the hall was where Jerry Colangelo's office was at.
Mhm.
Uh, and so I'm sitting at my desk. Okay, now what do I do? I guess I'll figure out what it means to be the GC of this organization, and rearranging my desk and my stapler and this and that. And as it happens, the team had just traded for Shaquille O'Neal like a
Oh,
day
yeah.
before. And so Shaquille just walks past my office, waves at me as he's walking by, and he's enormous. And I just kind of say to myself, okay, I'm in a whole different world here. All of a sudden, I just went from
Yeah.
working in the car industry to
Yeah.
having Shaquille walk by and knocking my window.
Wave at you.
So it was interesting, and it
Yep.
was drinking through a fire hose, and you know what it's like having been a general counsel. It's different than practicing in a firm,
Yep.
having multiple clients. Your focus changes. You have to deal with a lot of different subject matter, pieces of legal subject matter that you don't necessarily have comfort in because you're much more focused in a law firm. So employment, immigration, regulatory sides of things, other than what you deal with the SEC and all that, but
Yep.
um, just a different skill set that you have to employ,
Yep.
and you're also a manager now. You're leading people, not just leading transactions or matters, and
Yep.
that's good skill sets.
Yeah, you're working for a high profile organization, so you gotta kinda like, you're navigating sort of a different world where, you're not only, everything you do, you're advising an organization where everything they do is gonna be scrutinized to the highest level. I mean, it's literally every day in the newspaper, talk radio, et cetera. I mean, every single transaction, everything is being scrutinized. So you're the GC for that organization. Eventually, then you get the opportunity to move up and become the president. How many years were you the GC before you ultimately became the president?
So I was GC for 4.5 years. Rick Welts departed to become the CEO of the Golden State Warriors. Uh, the team promoted me to chief operating officer for a brief period of time, for about 6 months. They had somebody else come in as president who was there for a short period of time, ended up moving on from that position. And then I got promoted up to president, was president for about 4 or 5 years. And then they added on the CEO title. Um, and at that point took on more responsibility because Robert was, as an owner, not necessarily stepping back, but he was certainly, I think, more comfortable with kind of letting go of the reins of being more actively involved from a management standpoint.
Mm,
Uh, and so I was in that role from 2012 until the sale of the team when I exited in February of 2023. So
yeah,
basically 11 years in that role, and
and
15, almost 16 with the organization internally.
that's amazing, and so much success over that period of time. I mean, just aside from the business success, I mean, you that team, and it's all public. I mean, so Sarver buys the team for 400 million, exits at a $4 billion valuation. So, I mean, you were part of that's a massive success story, and in top of that, over that period of time, the Suns end up going to the finals, should have won it.
Right.
I don't know, you probably, but as a fan, I feel like they should have won it that year. But just incredible success, and you led renovation of the arena downtown. So you had a lot on your plate that you were navigating a lot over that period of time, and were extremely successful. I mean, just what was that experience like?
Well, it sounds cliche to say, but you can't say it enough in business. The fact of the matter is the people you have around. If you're a leader, your success is specifically driven by the people you have around you, and then your ability to harness the best out of those people. And we just had terrific people, top to bottom at the Suns organization. Um, yeah, look, when you buy something going into it, it was interesting. Not that Robert was criticized, but there definitely would be some people when he paid. It's actually 425 million in 2004, which was an NBA record at the time. And
Yeah.
at the time, people would say, or some would say, he overpaid. That's crazy. This thing isn't worth that. What's he doing? And then lo and behold, sells it for 10x that.
Mhm.
And the value of sports just intrinsically, it's a supply and demand issue. And so even though there are periods where these valuations level off, they're always going to continue to continue to grow. But you also have to function in that environment, and you have to have an organization that is continually adapting, that is continually innovating, um, because to your point, there's so much attention on the sports world. These teams become almost living laboratories, if you will, for innovation. And your sponsors, who are the Nikes of the world or the Intels of the world, that are looking to take their innovations and show them to the world. A lot of times, what's interesting to see is you'll see some of the things they're trying to accomplish routed through these sports teams, through their sponsorship deals, to kind of to bring them to life, if you will. And a great example of that would be like sports betting in Arizona and the deal we did with FanDuel.
Mhm.
First, we were the first in the country to have a an in-house sports book in our arena, and that was the model that they were looking to do as sports betting became legal across the various states. And so we were number one, heavily involved in getting sports betting approved in the state of Arizona, working with the tribes and working with the governor's office, but then also working with the different betting companies to get it positioned the right way that the teams and the betting companies could create these real powerful relationships. And so just so
Yeah.
much creativity, and again, everything you do is viewed under this microscope. And so you have to always be thinking from that perspective. It's actually a very it's almost like being a politician in a certain degree, that that everything you do is going to have a certain level of scrutiny to it. And so yes,
Yeah.
you are always thinking about those things, but we just
Amazing experience.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's just an amazing experience.
I talked to Jerry about that recently. Jerry's gotten to know him very, very well over the years with Grand Canyon. And I was talking to him about sports betting, and we were in Las Vegas recently for the Grand Canyon, for the WAC
Mhm.
tournament. And Jerry's telling all his stories and stuff. And I love talking to him about all this sort of stuff. And I was talking to him about, the expansion of the NBA, and that Vegas is likely to be a destination, one of the, probably Vegas and Seattle. And we were talking about, how that would have been a completely foreign idea to have an NBA franchise located in Vegas. And now you're seeing all these professional sports franchises that are locating there. You've obviously got hockey now, you got football, baseball, the A's are going to relocate there and
Right,
likely have an NBA expansion team. And he was saying in his day and age, when he owned the Suns, he said, I didn't even want anybody to tell me what the line was. Like,
right,
he's like, I didn't even want that in my head, the knowledge of that. It was so taboo, the concept of sports betting. And you think about like Pete Rose and the things like that. And he was just so conscious of that. He didn't even want to know what the line was. He just would tell people, don't I don't want to see it, and I don't want anybody to say those words to me, because I don't want to be associated with gambling in any way. And then you transition like with what you dealt with, where the league really embraced it.
right.
and how you navigate some of that stuff and the ideas and how you would sort of deal with that, not only from just a legal standpoint, a regulatory standpoint, but from a perception standpoint. It had to be really interesting.
It was from just so complicated and so many different stakeholders that um, had to have their perception or their perspective dealt with and managed and satisfied also. Like, and a great example of that would be the Indian tribes, based on how the compacts worked and their almost monopoly on gambling, and rightly so. Their interests um, needed to be correctly dealt with, so that they were getting the value out of this as well, and making sure that all those different components work together was a fascinating thing to be part of. And from a pure revenue generation standpoint for the state, it's been very successful. I think it'll continue to be successful. From the risk to the game, that was always the concern, and the integrity of the game. Everybody had to be, whether and whatever sport you're talking about, that's paramount, because if people don't have faith in the fact that the outcome is truly based on just the competition happening on the field,
Mhm.
um, that that blows up the entire model of professional sports.
Right.
There has to be confidence in the integrity of the game, and I think the leagues have done a very good job navigating that. I
Yeah.
also know that there's the reality is the controls that are in place now, by virtue of technology, in terms of what it's a lot harder for a bad actor to get away with doing the things that 15, 20, 30 years ago you could have probably easily gotten away from, in terms of game fixing or point pick,
Yeah.
whatever it is. Um, it's it's a much more controlled environment, because some of the protective technologies that are in place to help make sure that
Yeah.
we are creating that integrity of the game, or maintaining that integrity of the game.
Yeah. That makes sense. Um, well, we're running out of time, so I want to skip ahead a little bit. I'm going to have you back on. I could spend an entire episode just talking to you about your experience with the Suns, and so I'm sort of going through it a little faster than I wanted to. But there's a couple things I wanted to get to sort of before we wrap up. One of them to me is just like what I think again, like you've the idea of sort of serving others. Like I feel like you're the epitome of that. You served your country. You're so like you push yourself to your mental and physical boundaries. I was just looking at the thing before we hopped on here. I'm looking at all the different organizations that you've been a part of. You were top 21 leader of 2022, a board member or past member of, and I'm going to run through a few of these just because I just want people to understand kind of your dedication to to others. Sandra Day O'Connor Institute for American Democracy, Downtown Phoenix, Phoenix Suns Charities, Greater Phoenix Leadership, Arizona Lodging and Tourism Association, the Arizona Chamber of Commerce, American Heart Association, Phoenix Heart Walk Chairman, Father's Day Council, Father of the Year Award recipient, board member of Special Olympics of Arizona, and a lifetime member of the Thunderbirds. So, in addition to everything you're doing, you're a husband, you're a father, you're raising a family, you're obviously very busy with the jobs that you've been involved in, but at the same time, you've been very dedicated to service. Where do you think that comes from? And talk a little bit about kind of your motivation for being so involved from that perspective.
Yeah. Part of it is by example of watching others, my parents, professionals that I looked up to, that that were involved in different charitable activities, and just recognizing that as a leader, you have an obligation, I think, to give back. And the military definitely has a component of that I think instilled that in me. That there's a um, that there's this kind of mindset that you can, if all you're doing is just focusing on the career piece of it, and generating the next dollar, and buying the bigger home, whatever it is, those things over time become less and less important, and give you less and less joy and value. What does give you value is when you go to a Special Olympics event, and you see the joy that the athletes there have competing in that setting. and knowing that you had a part in creating that for them, even if
Yeah.
it's sitting on the board and helping their CEO make decisions and fundraise and things like that. But when you get to, it's almost like you could say it's almost selfish because you get this feeling of
Get so much out of it.
you've
Yeah.
been on board, you've been involved,
Yeah.
like you've been involved in a university setting where you're educating people and helping them spring on to their next stage in life.
Mhm.
That kind of the personal benefit that you get from doing that, pays just enormous dividends. And yeah, are there times when you're super, super busy and like, oh, I've got a board meeting for a charity that I'm involved in, and the only thing you are getting out of it is, you know, but that value is just absolutely, I think something that drives people. And look, most people I know very few people of my colleagues who have not, in one way or the other, given back by sitting on charity boards, lending their expertise, giving dollars, um, volunteering, as a coach or a mentor. I think that we do a good job in this country, really instilling that charitable piece in
Yeah.
people, and so it's just something it's always been important to me, and something I'll probably just always do in one fashion or another the rest of my life.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think you end up getting more out of it, I think, than so it's one of those, as I sort of mentor people now as I'm getting up in years, and I just recommend to younger professionals, whether they're an attorney or anything. I mean, get involved in the community, get involved, and then you're going to find that you end up, like you said, it almost feels selfish at the end of the day because you end up getting so much more out of it than what you could ever put in, being involved in those types of activities. So I couldn't agree with you more.
Right.
Okay, so one of the last things I want to get to here is what you're up to today. And I know you got a variety of things going on, but one of the cool things, and we started the show with it, and I want to sort of wrap up with this, is the AZ Drive.
Right.
Did I say that? Is it Arizona Drive or is it AZ Drive?
It's Arizona Drive, although we're working on a new logo that's going to be cut down to AZ Drive. It's a pretty sleek one, so I'm excited about it. This is a really interesting, kind of, I would initially have called it a passion project, and not really my passion because, again, as I said at the beginning, I'm kind of new to the pickleball world, although I really do enjoy the sport. But in the world of professional pickleball, for those who don't really follow it or know, there's really two main entities, actually three. There's APP, then there's Professional Pickleball Association, and then there's Major League Pickleball. And within the last literally 2 months, PPA and MLP merged.
Hmm.
We here locally, we have, and when I say we, our ownership group is Larry Fitzgerald, Devin Booker's involved, Dirks Bentley, a number of other local celebrities and business people. A guy named Doug Hirsch, who's actually not local, but he's a big VC guy.
Hmm.
Um, these folks are absolute pickleball fanatics. They love the game,
Yeah.
like passionate fans and players. And so Larry had the opportunity to acquire the Major League Pickleball franchise rights for the state of Arizona.
Hmm.
He calls me up.
This is Larry Fitzgerald.
Larry Fitzgerald.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So Larry Fitzgerald, who I developed a relationship with because he was a owner of the Suns as well. So created that relationship over the years, and just a terrific guy. I mean, everybody goes without
Yeah.
saying, Larry's a gem of Arizona. Everybody knows that.
Yep.
He calls me up and he's like, "Hey, I have this franchise, and they'd already done one season. He's like, do you know anybody who's kind of young and hungry, who, maybe is like midpoint in their career, who has sports experience, who, might want to kind of take this on? Because we really need somebody to take it and get it off the ground. Once this merger happens,
Hmm.
there's huge capital infusion into the leagues. There's going to be a lot more bandwidth behind it. It's going to be a lot more formalized, and these things are all happening now. So we need kind of somebody to come in here. And so, do you have any recommendations? And then in the same conversation, or literally like the next sentence, he's like, "Why don't you do it for us?
I knew that was
I'm
coming.
coming
Yeah.
in just for, come in for the next 6 months or so, help us get it up and running, help us deal with the league, help us deal with the merger." And so we talked it over for, one or two phone calls, and with the other principals. And I was like, sure, you know what? Hey, I am doing other things. I'm looking at other business opportunities. But I do have some time, and obviously I have the background to help you set this thing up. And
Mhm.
so sure. And signed up as a consultant. And literally within, I think, the first one or two conference calls with the league, they're introducing me as the team president of the Arizona Suns. I'm like, what? Or the Arizona, I'm sorry, the Arizona Drive. And I'm like,
Sure.
okay, I guess I'm team president for the time being. Sounds great. And it does kind of make sense to have that when you're dealing with the other teams in the league and this and that, and you're dealing with sponsors. But
Yep.
Brian, I tell you, it's been a lot more work than I thought it was going to be. So Larry
Yep.
understands that for sure, and that's fine. I've very much enjoyed it. Here's
Yeah.
what's great about it: from a you think about like professional development and skill sets and things like that. The one thing I've never done is I've never headed up a startup, and that's
Mm.
exactly what this is. It is a startup
Yeah.
from the standpoint of literally having to kind of build it up from the ground up from initial investors coming in because we still have more capital raise we're doing to getting it set up with the league, to getting sponsors signed up, to building out your processes. Now, I obviously have the experience of having run an organization with, a couple thousand employees and all the systems in place and dealing with a league that's highly sophisticated and mature and has all the processes. So you know what the blueprint needs to look like going forward. But
It's
it's
getting from here to there.
yeah,
That
going from here to
yeah.
there. So I'm doing everything from reviewing the merger documents for the major transaction, to dealing with the subscription documents for our investors coming in, to actually building out like sponsorship decks for our naming rights jersey and things like that. That
Yep.
you know, I hate to say it, but normally I had people for that before. I'm either do it myself or have some consultants on the outside that we're utilizing for it. But it's been a lot of fun, and what's amazing about it. So here's the thing that as I've gotten into it, that surprised me, and also I think gives me a lot of hope for the future of it is just the people involved in it at at the league level and the team level. You've got some highly sophisticated business people who have experience in sports. Guys
Mhm.
like Mark Lazary, who was a former owner of the Milwaukee Bucks, just sold his position out of that. He's a team owner and an investor.
Mhm.
Tom London, who's the owner of the Hurricanes, is not just an investor; he's one of the leads on this. And
Mhm.
then you have to start looking across some of the individuals who are team owners who are big PE representation, private equity
Yep.
representation, um, just and then the celebrity ownership across the board as well. You've got some heavy hitters who are connected to this, who are passionate about it and want to see it be successful. And so
Mhm.
even that in and of itself, I think is going to give it a kind of a running head start to success as a legitimate major league spectator sport. And I do think it'll
Yep.
get there now that kind of the merger's behind it and it's got some capital and some real really dedicated and smart people who want to see it be successful.
Yeah, I could see that happening. I mean, it feels like you're kind of capturing lightning in a bottle a little bit with this kind of culmination of all these different sort of aspects coming together into one with like sort of the people behind the league as you just described, while simultaneously the sport just becomes more and more and more popular. Um, this is a bad analogy maybe, but it seems a little bit similar to me in the way that sort of boxing sort of kind of went down and UFC came up,
Right.
and you see where the UFC is today, and you look at to me, I'm just not a tennis guy. I've never really gotten into tennis, and I know tennis is still extremely popular, but I hear more people who play pickleball than tennis.
I
And
do.
so, it's like I could almost see pickleball kind of replacing tennis in some way. And that's so I don't mean to suggest that boxing's bad or tennis is bad, but I sort of see this wave coming of people seem this interest that they have in playing pickleball and now seeing these professionals playing it. Like I think that is sort of building, if you will.
You're absolutely right about your analogy is a very good one. You're seeing a couple of stats really fast. We're running out of time, but I think these are pertinent to what you just said. One, in 2024, in terms of participation rates, pickleball is now the number 3 sport in the country in terms of people who are actually playing it, or
Wow.
participating. Number 1 is running, because people can go out and run all day long, and
Yep.
number 2 is cycling. Number 3 is pickleball. You're seeing enormous numbers of tennis courts being converted to pickleball space across the country.
Yep.
And the last part that is extremely important from a sports marketing standpoint is the demographic shift in the participants. So traditionally it's been, 50 and older has by far been the largest demographic. And it has now shifted to where the largest demographic of players is between 18 and 34. That represents 29% of players of pickleball in the United States. That's enormous because from a sports marketing and advertising standpoint,
Yeah.
that demographic is highly, highly valuable. They're the most engaged. They're the most socially active. There's literally, you go look in the New York Post. I think it was yesterday that there was an article that said that online dating apps, forget them, who needs them. People are meeting up with and meeting
Oh,
new
pickleball.
interests on pickleball courts.
Yeah.
That
Yeah. That makes
and here's
sense.
what's interesting about it: people show up to play pickleball at a court, a public court, and or anywhere really. You don't play with an opponent you show up with. You kind of get in a rotation, and you end up playing with people you don't even know. And
Mm.
so and it's closer, it's more intimate. You're right across the. It's a
Yeah.
different, it's a highly accessible and highly social sport. And I think in today's world, it
Yeah.
resonates with them.
Well, and I could also see similarities with golf in that way too. I mean, people obviously, you know, the popularity of golf has gone through the roof in especially when Tiger Woods got involved, and it kind of captured the hearts and minds of the people in that age demographic that you talked about, kind of made golf cool. You find like if pickleball can capture that same sort of energy of having its own Tiger Woods, and having some social exposure, I guess, from that standpoint. Not only is it something that you can go appreciate watching something like that, but then when you're done watching it, just like golf, you can go play yourself, and
In
for the
Arizona,
rest of your life.
in Arizona, by the way, is a hotbed for pickleball. We have a USA Pickleball, the governing body for the country is located here. Mike Neely, who used to run the Fiesta Bowl, is
Yep.
running that. So obviously a highly sophisticated guy involved in pickleball at that level. We're the number 5 state in the US for the number of courts. And in terms of like online interest by Google Trends, we're the number 2 state in the country in terms of people who are interested in it. And
Wow.
just number of facilities that are coming online, getting built. Everything. We got Proton here, which is a manufacturer, high level manufacturer of pickleball paddles located in Scottsdale. You've got other facilities that are coming online, Pure Pickleball, the Orchard, a whole bunch. It's a great ecosystem, and
Yeah.
how long I'm
Awesome.
involved in it, I don't know. It's until they either tell me to beat it, or something else comes along that perks my interest. But it has
Yeah.
been a fun to be involved in, and that startup piece, I've actually found myself enjoying doing that.
Yeah, I'm sure it's kind of scratching that itch, I guess, in a couple of different ways. I mean, you're involved in sports, you're involved with a great ownership group, and then you get kind of that startup experience as well, which is kind of new for you, as we talk about. I mean, you're constantly challenging yourself, and so I'm sure for you, it's like this is something new that you can really roll up your sleeves and dig into. It's exciting to Yeah, it's exciting to watch, and I'm excited for the future of it, and I love that you're doing it. I think it's a lot of fun, and I think it's got explosive opportunity written all over it, and I think it's gonna be fun to see where it all ends up.
For sure.
All right. Well, I think we've sort of gone over the time here. We've covered a lot of ground in a really quick order. I didn't take a deep dive into any of this stuff, so I'm definitely gonna twist your arm to come back on the show again because I want to talk in greater depth on any number of these topics. But I appreciate you coming on and taking the time to talk here today and kind of go over your story.
Absolutely.
Thanks everybody for tuning in. Again, please subscribe for future episodes. You can watch on YouTube. You can listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks to Array for sponsoring the show and making this all possible. And thanks again to Jason Rowley for joining us today.